some observer noted, he said that, if somebody like a Sanders is ahead by 11 points in Utah, this is the canary in the coal mine, which I think is true because the last national poll had us beating Trump by 19 points. And again, while it is no secret, that progressives and conservatives have some very, very deep differences of opinion, I think what we all believe in is that politics is not making fun of other people. It is not insulting almost everybody that you can think of. That is not what American democracy does. Now, I think one of the reasons that our campaign is doing so well and why we're seeing just, I hesitate to use the word huge. After you appear on Saturday Night Live, you got to be careful about the words that you use. But I mean, one of the reasons why we have now spoken in this campaign to over 800,000 people in rallies like this all over America is that we are doing something very unusual in contemporary American politics. We are telling the truth. And reality, as everybody here knows, the truth, whether it is in our personal lives or in our political lives, is not always pleasant or easy. That's life. But this I do believe, that unless we are prepared to have the courage to put the major crises that we face right up on the table, and unless we are prepared to discuss them and analyze them and resolve them, we are not going to go forward as a nation. And let me also say that for a variety of reasons, and I don't mean to be too hard on the corporate media, the truth is that the people who will have to decide what the real issues are you and not the network news. And I have been very concerned, and I never really appreciated the depth of this as I campaigned all over the country. For media, much of what the campaign is about is political gossip and a soap opera and polls and money, rather than the reality of people's lives and how we are trying to address those problems. I was just the other day at a rally and a guy comes up to me and he says, really agitated, very upset. He says, I'm $160,000 in debt with student loans. I've got 4 kids. I'm unemployed. I'm going to lose my house. Okay? Literally yesterday or the day before, saw a young woman, came up to me, tears in her eyes, working 60 hours a day. She has a young daughter. She doesn't have the time to spend with her daughter. Those are the issues, and a dozen more that we have got to be talking about. The issues are your lives. Not political gossip. And the reason that this campaign, I think, has been doing so well and generating so much excitement is that we are talking about the real issues facing the American people. And let me start off with one. And these are not, I don't have any joy telling you what I tell you. It's not good news, but we have to deal with it. Number one, I know that in Utah, you have many, many people, as in my own state of Vermont, that have fought and died to defend American democracy, and we thank them all for what they have done. But we have to be honest and look at the state of American democracy right now. And what we conclude is that we have a corrupt campaign finance system which is undermining American democracy. You know, democracy is not a complicated concept. It means that you have a vote, and you have a vote, and you have a vote. It means one person, one vote. Candidates make their case. You want to vote for me, great. You want to vote against me, that's called democracy. Democracy does not mean billionaires buying elections. When you have a handful of billionaires like the Koch brothers and a few more who are prepared to spend some $900 million in this campaign to elect candidates who represent the rich and the powerful, that, my friends, is not democracy. That is called oligarchy. And together, we are going to do everything to make sure that this country never becomes an oligarchic society. But it's not just a corrupt campaign finance system with their super PACs funded by billionaires. It is Republican governors in the most cowardly way imaginable trying to suppress the vote. All over this country, we have Republican governors who are trying to make it hard for people of color, for poor people, for old people, for young people to participate in the political process. We have one of the lowest voting turnout rates of any major country on earth. We should be working to increase that number, not lower that number. And I say to those cowardly Republican governors, if you don't have the guts to engage in a free and fair election, get another job, get out of politics. But it is not only a corrupt campaign finance system that together we have got to address, it is a rigged economy. Now let me tell you something you're not going to hear about much in the corporate media. Today we have one of the most unequal distributions of wealth and income of any major country on earth. Worse here than at any time since 1928. Listen to this. This is where we are as a nation today. Top 0.1%, not 1%, 0.1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. 20 wealthiest people in America now own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million people. And let me tell you what a rigged economy looks like. Who is, anyone here know who the wealthiest family in America is? Smart guys, okay. It's the Walton family who owns Walmart. The Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, pays its employees at Walmart wages that are so low that many of those employees are on food stamps, Medicaid, or subsidized housing. And who pays for those food stamps and Medicaid? You do. This is what a rigged economy is about, when the working class and middle class have to subsidize the wealthiest family in the country because they refuse to pay their workers a decent wage. So I say to the Walton family, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. But it is not just wealth inequality. It is everything to do with income. We got millions of people in this country, in my state of Vermont, and I'm sure in Utah, they're not working one job, they're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, trying to cobble together some income and some health care. And the reason for that is that wages in America are too darn low. Anybody here working for $12 an hour or less? Well, I'm not quite sure how you are surviving. That's hard, isn't it? All right? So here is a radical idea. The radical idea is, number one, we create an economy that works for all of us, not just the top 1%. And the second radical idea, which is really not so radical, is that if you work 40 hours or 50 hours a week in this country, you should not live in poverty. We're going to raise the minimum wage. We're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. What this campaign is about is urging people to think outside of the box, not to accept the status quo as something, not to accept the status quo as something that has to exist forever and ever. People do not have to work for $8 or $9 an hour. Those are policy decisions that can be changed. Now here is the irony of all of this. Many people don't know it. But in America, we have moms working incredibly long hours. You got dads working long hours. You got kids working long hours. Marriages are stressed. Kids don't get the attention that they need from their parents. And at the end of all of that, the American people today work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world, longer than the Japanese. And you know what? Despite all of that, 58% of all new income is going to the top 1%. That's wrong. Now this campaign is doing well because we're listening to the people and not to campaign contributors. We're listening to senior citizens and disabled veterans who cannot make it on $12,000 a year Social Security. My Republican colleagues, most of them want to cut Social Security. Not going to happen. We got bad news for them. We're going to raise Social Security benefits. This campaign is listening to women. And women are tired of working for 79 cents on the dollar. And I know that every man here will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. This campaign is listening to young people. And the young people are saying, you told us to get the best education we could. You told us that it was important for our own lives and for America. Why, therefore, are we coming out of college $30,000, $50,000 in debt? Again, think outside of the box. It is crazy that in a world where we need the best educated workforce, we are punishing people for doing the right thing and getting an education. In the year 2016, the economy, technology are very, very different than they were 50 or 100 years ago. People today need more education. And that is why I believe when we talk about public education now, it's not good enough to talk about the first grade through the 12th grade. We've got to be talking about making public colleges and universities tuition free. We have got to lower the outrageous burden of student debt that millions of people are carrying. Now, my opponents say, well, Bernie, you know, you're like Santa Claus. You're giving out all this free stuff. You're going to lower student debt. You're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. How are you going to pay for it? Let me tell you how we're going to pay for it. All of you remember that in 2008, 2009, after Wall Street's greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior drove this country into a massive economic downturn, they went begging Congress for a bailout. Well, I think today it is time to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And the money that tax raises will, in fact, pay for significant reductions of student debt and making public colleges and universities tuition free. This country bailed out Wall Street. It is now Wall Street's time to help the middle class. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. And what they told me is that with 11 million undocumented people in this country, they are tired of being exploited. They are tired of living in the shadows. They are tired of living in fear. They want, and I want, comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. And if Congress does not do its job, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to do all that I can. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the African American community. And they are asking, how does it happen that we have communities like Flint, Michigan, where children are being poisoned by excessive lead in the water? How does it happen throughout this country? In low-income African-American communities, the schools are inadequate. Unemployment is sky high. Health care is not available. And what they ask, and it makes sense to me, is how can we spend trillions of dollars fighting a war in Iraq we never should have gotten into? But somehow we don't have the money to rebuild Flint, Michigan, and hundreds of other communities in America. That's wrong. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Native American community. I don't have to tell anybody here who has studied 5 minutes of American history the terrible way we have treated, this country has treated Native Americans from before we were a country, from the day the first settlers came here. Native Americans have been lied to, they have been cheated. Treaties that they signed have been abrogated, and today across this country, in Native American reservations and in communities, unemployment high, suicide rates high, alcoholism high, education low. We have a moral responsibility to address the many, many bad things that we have done to the first Americans. Native Americans have enriched our culture, and by the way, more than any other people, they have taught us about what the environment is. And that is that we live with nature, not against nature. I'm a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment. I have talked to scientists all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. It is already doing devastating harm in this country and around the world. We have a moral responsibility to leave this planet in a way that is healthy and habitable for our children and our grandchildren. And that means having the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry. And it means telling them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of our planet. And it also means, when we talk about the environment, that at a time when we are increasingly worried about the supply of clean water in this country, we have got to phase out fracking. I have been accused and attacked for saying the following, so let me say it again. Because I don't want any ambiguity here. I believe that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. I believe there is something wrong when every other major country on earth guarantees health care to all of their people, but we are not doing it in this country. The Affordable Care Act has done some very good things, but we have got to go further. Today, despite the Affordable Care Act, 29 million people have no health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and copayments, and every one of us in this country is being ripped off by the greed of the drug companies. Drug companies are charging us by far the highest prices in the world. People are dying because they can't afford the medicine they need. 1 out of 5 Americans can't fill the prescriptions their doctors write. That is crazy. So I believe that in the United States we've got to join the rest of the industrialized world. I believe that we've got to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when we look at the issues facing our country, we have also got to address the crisis of having a broken criminal justice system. In this country, we should not be having more people in jail than any other country on earth. We need major reforms in police departments. Police officers who break the law should be held accountable. We need to demilitarize local police departments. And we need to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Too many lives in this country over the years have been ruined because of police records associated with possession of marijuana. Right now, the Federal Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. That is why I have introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. In my state of Vermont, neighboring New Hampshire, and states all over this country, we're facing a major crisis with opiate addiction and heroin addiction and overdosing. Every day, people are dying from heroin overdosing. And in my view, what we have got to recognize is that drug addiction and substance abuse are health issues, not criminal issues. We need a revolution in mental health treatment in this country. people who are in crisis, whether it is addiction or other problems, need to get the treatment when they need it, not 6 months from now. Everybody in this room knows that the history of change, real change, never takes place from the top on down, always from the bottom on up. When workers were being exploited, bad working conditions, low wages, millions of workers came together to form trade unions. The civil rights struggle in this country is a history of millions of African Americans and their white allies standing together to say that in America we will not accept racism, discrimination, segregation. 100 years ago, not a long period of time, 100 years ago, women in this country did not have the right to vote, could not get the education they wanted, could not do the work they wanted. But what happened is women and their male allies fought back. Women went to jail, they went on hunger strikes, some of them died. And people said, in America, women will not be treated as second-class citizens. And by the way, as everybody here knows, the attacks against women continue. So let me be as clear as I can. And that is, when Republicans talk about family values, you all know what they're talking about. What they are saying is that no woman in this room, in this state, in this country should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. Elected president, not only will I fight vigorously to protect a woman's right to choose, we're going to fight hard to make sure that our gay brothers and sisters have the right to be married. Let me also tell you what change is about. And this is how change takes place. If we were here in this gymnasium 10 years ago, and somebody jumps up and says, you know, Bernie, I think that by the year 2015, gay people in America will be able to be married. You know what the person next to him would have said? Said, you're crazy, what are you smoking? Right? But change is about the gay community and their straight allies facing incredible hatred and bigotry, standing together. Standing together to say that in this country, people have the right to love and marry whoever they want, regardless of gender. Here is how change takes place. If we were here 7 years ago and somebody jumped up and said, you know, Bernie, the $7.25 minimum wage, that's crap. Nobody can live on that. We've got to raise it to $15 an hour. You know what people would have said? $15 an hour? You're talking about doubling the minimum wage. It can't happen. It'll never happen. You know what happened? People in the fast food industry, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, they went out on strike. They raised a ruckus. They fought back. And then you know what happened? Seattle, $15 an hour. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Oregon, New York, $15 an hour. Now that is how change comes about. Change comes about when people look around them and they say the status quo is just not acceptable. Racism is not acceptable. Sexism, homophobia, the exploitation. The exploitation of workers. The fact that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country, that we have more income and wealth inequality, that we are the only major country that doesn't have paid family and medical leave, that we're the only major country that doesn't guarantee health care to all people, that millions of young people are leaving school deeply in debt. People are looking around and they're saying, we don't like the status quo. We want real change. And people understand that real change is not going to come from candidates whose super PAC raises millions of dollars from Wall Street and the drug companies and the fossil fuel industry. Real change comes about when millions of people stand up, fight back, and demand a government that represents all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributions. Tomorrow night, here in Utah at 6 p.m., there are going to be caucuses all over the state. The people of Utah have the opportunity to help make American history. The people of Utah can send a profound message, and that is Utah is prepared to fight for a political revolution. And if Utah comes out and votes for a political revolution, and Idaho does it, Washington will not be far behind, and then comes Oregon, then comes California, and then comes the path to the White House. The road to the White House runs through the West. Let's come out tomorrow. Thank you all very much.